Have you ever felt like it's just one thing after another? Like you're dealing with the same issues, fighting the same fires. Like you know you're capable of more, but you end up working really, really hard to just end up in the same place. And I've been there. It's a really frustrating season to be in. And at times, like you can feel like there's just no way beyond this invisible wall. I see a lot of entrepreneurs experiencing this, and I feel like it's one of the main reasons why they just end up dropping off and tapping out of the game. And I want to speak on this because I'm seeing a lot of people getting to that point where they're just feeling so fried because of this constant cycle of working really hard and feeling like you're getting nowhere and almost like you're powerless to the circumstances. And like there's these things that are just getting in your way. Like the other day, a friend of mine was talking about how she's fed up of this crappy economy that we're in, right? And how her sales are slowing down and people are just not buying like they used to back in the day. And she's trying to get financially free, but this effing economy is getting in her way. Her words, not mine. But the thing is, she's not the only one that's feeling like this. The state of the economy is one of the most common explanations that entrepreneurs give for things not working out for them. Almost 60% of entrepreneurs say that it's one of their biggest concerns. And like I've had many conversations with other entrepreneurs that basically say that it's impossible to make money in this economy. So if you're listening to this, like 60%, 1 out of 2 of you are probably feeling that same thing, right? But when I hear people talking like this, I realize that they're really unaware of something important that is keeping them stuck in these cycles. And I'll get back to that in a minute because there's other things I hear people say. And honestly, I've said them myself before. They feel like competitors are getting in their way and eating their market share. Or the government changing the tax rules are getting in their way and they're making less money. Or social media algorithms are changing like overnight and what they thought they knew is no longer relevant. So their whole plan is just effed. Like these are valid points on the surface, because you feel like you're getting ahead and then these things kick you back down. I mean, the economy, competitors, all of that kind of stuff, it matters. They can absolutely affect your business. But in saying that, I want to pause and challenge it because I believe that these things get more credit than they actually deserve. We can think that the economy improving, taxes going down, social media algorithms going back to what they used to be in 2015 or whatever, the market picking up, people buying more, that they're all going to get us out of this slump and cycle that we're currently in. But there's something fundamentally wrong with this line of thinking, and most people do not even take this into account. So I want you to hear me when I'm saying this, right? None of those things are in your sphere of influence. And that's the big problem about getting pissed about them and focusing on them as the reason as to why you keep going around in circles. Because you can't influence the economy. You can't influence your competitors. You cannot call up the Chancellor of the Exchequer and say, mate, like, put your taxes down. You can't get Zucky on the phone and say, reset the algorithm. These things are not going to happen, right? They're just not going to happen. But I get it because I went through this phase of being really angry at competitors that were undercutting my prices. And I remember focusing on it so much where I was like, why are these people coming into the game and putting their prices so low to the point that I can't even compete at a profit? So I'm looking at them every single day, like tracking their prices, seeing what they're doing, getting really annoyed at it until I realized that it was a super big cop-out for me to be blaming their pricing strategy on why I'm not doing that well. And many of us do similar, like we blame the taxes, we blame the competitors, we blame this and this and that. But when we do that, we ignore something really important, and I'm going to tell you what that is. I realized that there are only really 2 sources of influence in any situation. And our responsibility is stacking one of them in our favor. So the first source of influence are all the things that are happening outside of us that we do not have control over. That's the economy, the competitors, taxing, government, algorithms, all of this stuff. The second is everything else that you can influence, right? And that list is long, and I'll go into that in a minute. And I realized after being really pissed with my competitors that I couldn't control what they were doing, right? I cannot control what is going on around me. but I could dramatically increase my influence over an outcome by changing what I was doing. And I think that's what the entrepreneurs that keep moving forward understand really, really well. They're aware of what's happening externally, but they spend most of their time and energy being really, really laser focused on what they can influence directly. Do you see the difference there? So if you're experiencing the same problems over and over again, and you just can't seem to get past it or through to the next level, it may be that the outcome that you want is being far more influenced by these external things than the things that are in direct sphere of your influence. In other words, you're spending more time being annoyed at the things that you cannot change than the things that you can. Our job is to tip that scale, to spend time increasing the number of things that we can directly influence. Things like your sales systems, your marketing systems, your offer, your hiring process, all the levers that you can actually pull. In saying that though, there is a really important caveat to this, and I'll circle back to it in a minute, right? But let me give you an example of what I did when I let all these external things stack up against me. When I recorded my first video podcast episode, I just recorded the video, gave it like a random title, didn't even create a thumbnail. So it was just like one of the clips from the video, which wasn't even that great, and just put it on Spotify. And you know what? I got the amazing total of 2 views. And this was after 6 months of procrastinating, planning the episode, setting everything up, editing, recording, all of this stuff, right? For two views. But thank you to those 2 viewers. Now, I could be thinking like, why is Spotify not suggesting my podcast? Why aren't people stumbling across this, right? I spent all this time like preparing it and, but there were a lot of external influences at play. Like I'm relying on Spotify's algorithm to do what it's going to do and all of this kind of stuff. So instead I asked myself, because I don't want to be stuck at 2 views, right? How can I have more influence over this outcome? So when I asked myself that question, a whole bunch of other stuff came to me. I started learning about thumbnails and click-through rates. I started learning about how to title the podcast episode. I started thinking about distribution channels. So I stopped relying on Spotify and I put it on Apple Podcast. I put it on YouTube where there's more discoverability. I changed how I promoted each episode. I decided I was going to get a minimum amount of clips from each episode and that I was going to start trying to create those moments organically in a way within each episode. So now I had about 6, 7, 8 things that are in my direct sphere of influence. I'm stacking these things now, things that are in my direct sphere of influence. And you know what happened? I got more than 2 views, right? So I started getting 10x those views or 5x those views because I started stacking the things that are in my direct sphere of influence. So in whatever the outcome is for you, right? Whatever it is that you want, ask yourself, what are the external sources of influence? And what are the internal sources of influence that I can directly control? So let's take the podcast views, for example. The external sources are things like the algorithm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. They're the competitors, the other YouTube channels, the other podcasters that are doing their amazing thing out there. They're the trends that are going on. They're the viewer behavior. They're even other platforms that are competing for the attention of people that I'm trying to reach through my podcast. I do not control any of these things, right? I don't control any of them. But I do control the topic that I choose for my episode, the title, the thumbnail, the first 30 seconds of the video, how I come across on camera, the pacing of the video. Those are a long list of levers that I can pull to get the outcome that I want. And the truth is, your list of things that are directly in your sphere of influence are usually far more longer than the things that are not in your sphere of influence. And the more of those levers that I pull and improve on, the more influence I have over my result, which means that I'm more likely to get out of the cycle that I'm in and break through to the next level. But there's one more level to this that we need to talk about, and it's the caveat that I mentioned earlier. Even when you start focusing on the things that you can directly influence, you still need to make sure that you're pulling the right levers from that list of things in your direct influence. So what do I mean? So people often say that the path to success lies in repetition. And I agree with that to a certain extent. Because repetition can start working against you if you don't use it correctly. And this is why. If you keep repeating the wrong things, so the things that are not going to get you to where you want to go, they're not going to get you to your outcome, even if they're in your zone of direct influence, you're going to stay stuck in that same cycle. Because this is the funny thing. When something isn't working, people tend to do more of that same thing because they think, if I do more of it, it's going to work. Like, it's got to work. But if what you're doing is never going to create the result that you want, doing more of that thing isn't going to get you to where you're trying to go, right? So let me give you an example. And I know this might just be such an obvious example, but let's play this out, right? So say you're a gardener and you want to get more clients, but you keep knocking on the doors of people that live in these brand new apartment blocks that don't have gardens. And you're knocking on their door asking them, I'm a gardener, do you want me to do your garden? And they're like, no, sorry, I've got no need for that. And if you're thinking to yourself, right, I just need to talk to 100 people, and if I've got a 2% conversion rate, 2 of them are going to say yes to my gardening, right? You're literally knocking on the wrong doors. So doing more of that, knocking on the doors of people that live in high-rise apartment blocks, isn't going to get you more clients for your gardening business because there aren't any gardens to fix over there. So again, how many doors you knock on is in your direct sphere of influence, but you're knocking on the wrong doors. So that's the thing that you really need to be aware of. Are you working on the right thing that is in your direct sphere of influence? And this is where I think a lot of people start experiencing burnout. Like, they are going in on something that isn't getting them the result that they want, but they just keep doing it because they think doing it more is going to get them what they want. But they're just wearing themselves out and not getting what they want. So at times, it's not about working harder. It's about working on the right things. Working hard only works when you're putting enough effort into the things that directly influence the outcome that you want and are actually having an influence on the outcome that you want. So if you're someone that's just going round in circles and you're trying to level up and you just can't seem to do it, start looking at how you can begin to tip the scale towards the things that are in your sphere of influence. And when you start figuring out which of those things get you to your outcome, just double down on those things.